everybody! In today's video I'm going to be showing you a 4D candy design. So there's three types of candy on this. There is a little circular lifesaver style candy, and then you take that off, you take the front of the wrapper off, and there's an eyeball inside instead of the obvious candy that you're expecting. And then there's a candy corn, and if you turn that candy corn around, there's a spider that's just waiting for somebody to take a bite and accidentally go along for the ride. And then the last one is a longer, almost Tootsie Roll style wrapper, and then if you open it up, there is some drippy blood and a bone. So nothing is what you think with this design. It's all 4D. Every element moves and changes. I love this one so much. A couple years ago, I did do an eye candy design very similar to the top piece, and I can put a link to that one in the description box below. It was done a little differently, and you might want to see how that one was done too if you are planning on doing this design just as a comparison. So I hope you check that out, and don't forget to click subscribe to see all my future videos as well. Bye!
So we're going to begin by prepping our form and fitting it to the nail. This is one of the few extreme sculpted nails where you don't need an extra long form. So we're going to just fit that to the nail nice and securely. If you need to, you can cut the sides of the form open for a better fit. If it looks like it fits well, you can skip that step. I'm going to blend the nail down to the form with a little bit of clear acrylic to create a nice smooth transition from natural nail to the form. I'm going to actually take that clear acrylic a little further down because I'm going to take a piece of wire and I'm going to press that into the wet acrylic. It's going straight down the form. You can use that middle line on the form as a guide for where and how straight to get your piece of wire. Cover up the wire to secure it, and then you're going to take a really nice Halloween glitter mix, whatever kind of Halloween glitter mix you want, and you're going to sculpt out your nail. So I'm going to take that glitter mix and basically apply it to the entire area. I'm sculpting a nice basic almond shaped nail, nothing too long or too crazy. The actual nail on this design isn't over the top or, insane. It's everything that happens on that piece of wire. So we're going to just sculpt a nice regular old nail, and then we're going to encapsulate it with a layer of clear acrylic. Anytime you're using something like a glitter or a glitter mix or an acrylic that even has a shimmer or a sheen to it, you are going to definitely want to apply a layer of clear acrylic so that one, it adds significant strength to the nail, and two, it protects that glitter from filing it. So now we're going to file the nail into shape with a hand file. I'm not using an e-file, and I'm being excruciatingly careful not to file my piece of wire. Once you're done filing, dust it off, and then apply a layer of gel top coat to that nail to make that glitter shine. Once that's cured, you can set that to the side, and now we're going to be making the piece of eye candy on a nail form backing. So I'm going to start by sculpting a circle of green acrylic, nice bright neon green. I'm going to add a second layer to that, and within that second layer I'm going to press two magnets, one on each side. So we're going to get those basically as far apart from each other as you can. Once those are in there, cover them up with a little bit more of the green acrylic so that they aren't sticking out, and hopefully they're not quite as visible, which they pretty much show anyways, but that's not a big deal because you won't even pay any attention to those magnets later on once there's so much else going on. And then we're going to sculpt a circle of white acrylic inside the green one, leaving a border of the green. So a nice little green frame. Once you are all done with that eyeball, then you're going to want to take and let that cure, then tightly wrap it with aluminum foil as tightly as you can, getting a nice, even, very round, soft edge around the outside edge. If you want to roll it on a hard surface like your tabletop to try to smooth that out. Apply a magnet over the top of the ones that are already in the little eye candy. So you've got magnets on top of the aluminum foil. Then you're going to go back to your neon green and you're going to sculpt the upper wrapper of this little candy. So it's going to basically cover up all of that aluminum foil on the surface of this eye candy. So just go around in a circle. Like I said, I do have a previous video of how to do this. I honestly really like my new version a lot better, but one thing that was kind of cool about the original is that I used a cellophane paper that was really metallic and shiny, and it was like Aurora Borealis AB kind of a holographic look. And so that part was pretty cool. And so if you were going to recreate this and you wanted to kind of combine them, you could either there's a lot of nail foils that have that kind of look to them, so maybe you would want to apply like a layer of foil glue gel over the wrapper and then press a foil like that onto it. It just looked a little bit more finished the way that I did it this time, but you could combine the two if you wanted to. So now that we have that done, I'm going to glue the base onto the nail with some clear acrylic, not actually using nail glue. This will hold a little bit better. And once that's secured just enough, I'm going to flip it to the sides and just apply a little bit more clear acrylic to the sides to make sure it is really stuck down. Now again, on a nail form backing, we're going to be sculpting a soft little triangle with the green acrylic. You don't need really sharp edges. You can keep everything a little bit more rounded. Once the acrylic turns matte, you're going to wiggle your brush underneath one side and then kind of just wrinkle it so that it looks like it's been pinched and twisted for the ends of the wrapper. Repeat for the other side, kind of tuck it in, try to make it approximately the same size as the first one. Once that is done and it's kind of turning that matte again, do the same thing, wrinkle and repeat. After those are both done, you can glue them under the sides of the little eye candy. Don't make them like directly across from, like if they're making a T on the nail, angle them slightly. I think it's just a little bit more visually pleasing if they are a little bit offset. Secure them to the back of the eye candy with some more of your neon green acrylic. And then once that is done, then you can go ahead and start working on the next piece. So I'm going to be making a candy corn. So on a nail form backing, yet again, we're going to be sculpting the first section of our candy corn with a triangle of white acrylic, cutting off the edge that's going to get the next layer with a craft knife to create a nice, really sharp, straight line. For the next color, I'm going to be using a very, very bright orange, and we're going to be sculpting that in. After that next layer has been sculpted in, I'm going to sort of press it up and around the white so that it creates a really nice sharp seal, cut off the back side, and then grab yellow. So just like candy corn, we're going to go white, orange, and then yellow. The reason to cut off the layers between is just so that when you file it, you get nice, sharp, crisp lines. If you wanted to do this in possibly an easier fashion, you could just sculpt your candy corn with white acrylic, do the whole thing with white, and then go back through later and paint the different colors on. So paint the orange stripe and paint the yellow on the bottom. If you feel like that would be easier for you, definitely go ahead and do that. I'm going to slide 2 bar beads onto my wire that's in the nail, and then I'm going to hold my little candy corn piece up to them just to see how it'll fit. Apply a little bit of nail glue to the one side of the bar beads, and then hold your candy corn, making sure not to get any glue on the wire. You don't want your beads glued to the wire, you just want the beads glued to the candy corn. I'm then going to secure those beads to the candy corn with some clear acrylic so that they will not fall off. Slide that piece off of the wire so that you don't accidentally attach anything to the wire. That's the last thing you want to do. And then you're going to fill in and round out the shape of the candy corn. So go over the back, up and over the beads with your white, orange, and yellow acrylic if you are using all 3. Being excruciatingly cautious not to cover up the holes in your beads or create any kind of obstruction that your wire will have to deal with when you try to put this back on the nail. So, if you do happen to have an issue, I would have a little narrow bit on hand so that you could just go through and file away any acrylic that gets where it's not supposed to. If you really do clog one of your beads, unfortunately, you probably will have to start this process over. And, I personally have never had that happen. I've just been, like I said, excruciatingly cautious. As long as you're careful, you should be fine. I try to be extra dramatic about this particular step just so that you don't make a mistake that would cost you precious time. So we've got the next layer, the orange, and then fill in the rest of the space with that yellow. Unlike the first time when I did everything in one bead at a time, at least, try to do one bead for each color. This time I'm going to use smaller beads going over section by section. Again, just to be a little bit more cautious not to fill in my beads. Once you are all done sculpting your little candy corn, you've got everything filled in and filled out, then you're going to take a hand file and you're going to go through and just file this candy corn into shape. Depending on your sculpting, it may have just a little bit of filing needed, or it may have a lot. If you have a lot of filing, just grab your e-file and smooth it out if you want to, instead of trying to do all this with a hand file. Just keep in mind, whatever you do, it's a little awkward to hold this candy corn while you're filing it. Once it's done, you can wiggle it back onto your little piece of wire, and then you can just figure out about where you want to cut off the extra wire, leaving approximately 1 centimeter gap, and cut off the extra wire. So now to make the bone candy, we're going to be doing 2 cylinders of purple acrylic around a straw. Whatever size straw you use will be the inside size of your candy. So choose one that is slightly smaller than what your candy to be, because if you choose one that's exactly the size and then you build up out and around it, it's going to end up bigger. So if you look at kind of how the shape of your nail is going, try to choose a straw that will make this piece of candy in line with the others. After you have those 2 cylinders sculpted and they're cured, you can slowly try to loosen them from the straw and pull them off. Once they are removed, you can take a hand file and make sure that their edges are nice and straight. After you have both of those all filed, so you file both ends, sculpt circles and a nail form backing of the same purple acrylic. Sculpt one, grab a cylinder, place it on top of that circle, press it in, repeat for the other side to create the two ends on the far sides of your little piece. Fold a nail form backing in half so that the shiny side is out, and place a magnet on each side of that. So you have a magnet on both sides of the shiny. Then you're going to take your little cylinders and you're going to attach them to the magnets with some more of the purple acrylic. So place a little bit of purple acrylic on top of magnet, hold your cylinder onto that on one side till it cures, repeat on the other side so that you are essentially creating a little thing to attach these two cylinders together. Hold that until it seems to cure, hold it tightly. Then replace magnets on top of your nail form backing and then attach them with more purple acrylic to the opposite side of the cylinder. This part here is a little bit more tedious because you want to make sure your magnets do not grab each other. So you have to be fairly active in your holding and fairly careful. So hold those together, and then on a nail form backing, we're going to be sculpting white acrylic. Leave your cylinders and that nail form backing contraption to the side. Don't mess with it too soon. Just let it stay there and hope for the best, because when you take it apart or you try to do that too soon, you'll pull your magnets out and you may have to start over. Like I said, on a nail form backing, once again, we're going to be sculpting the bone that's going to go inside this candy with white acrylic. And for anyone who's thinking any negative thoughts about the way that this bone looks currently, it is what it is. But then we're going to glue the thin side of the bone into one of the cylinders, leaving the joint exposed. Glue that in, just kind of glue it to the bottom of one of the magnets. Secure that with some clear acrylic up and around the backside so that it isn't going to go anywhere. And then on the ends of your cylinders, you're going to build them up so that it gives it sort of a twisted texture. So the purple part of the wrapper is just going around smooth, but then on the ends it gets that twist. So after you place that bead of purple acrylic down, take the tip of your brush and sort of just carve in a swirl. Then you're going to want to smooth out the transition from the side to the top of it with a little bit more purple acrylic on each one of the bulky sections of the swirl. If hopefully that seems logical to everybody besides just me, just try to make it look like it's actually a twisted wrapper. Repeat that on the other side so that it has that exact same texture on both sides. One thing I do want to mention for your bone is to make sure that it fits inside both cylinders and they'll close correctly before you actually glue it in, just so that if it has to be shorter or if it needs to be filed a little bit more narrow or anything along those lines, you can do that prior to gluing it in. So then once you have both of those have their little twisty shapes, you're going to pick the one with the bone and glue it to the end of the piece of wire. Secure it to the wire with more of your purple acrylic, just to make sure it is not going to fall off while you're doing this next step. So now sculpt the end of the wrapper on a nail form backing. It doesn't have to be any really specific shape. Long and narrow is essentially what you're going for, and thin. So you want to pat it out nice and thin. Let that cure up until it is fairly matte. So once you get to the point where you can comfortably slide your brush under it, slide your brush underneath it and kind of just wrinkle it up. You don't want it to be like a nice, smooth, even piece. You want it to be nice and pinched looking. Then place that around the wire, even, if you have to, use your fingers to kind of manipulate it so that it covers up the majority of the wire and the wrinkledest side is towards the other piece of the candy. If it doesn't go all the way around, like mine has a gap on the one side, you can go through and sculpt another piece for it on the nail form backing to fill in, so that you can make it look like one whole section. But before I do that, I just wanted to secure that to the candy with some more of my purple acrylic. So here's that next little filler piece. Pat that out into the same height approximately. It doesn't have to be the same width or length, just the same height, so that when you put it on with the rest of it, it looks like it goes. And then once that is cured up enough, you can fold it, do that, and then pick that piece up, fill in your gap, pat it in and around, and work it so that it looks like it just continues on with the rest. Secure that to the piece of candy with some more of the purple acrylic. Once that's all done, repeat for the other half of that piece of candy, and now cut off 3 long pieces of red thread. Lay those pieces of red thread onto a nail form backing. And then after those are there, you're going to take bits of red acrylic and you're just going to sculpt little tiny drips onto your piece of red thread. Use, like I said, tiny little bits of red acrylic and just take your time with this. I found holding the wire between 2 fingers so that it's nice and taut really helped the process, so that when I was trying to sculpt on them, it didn't move the wire or didn't move the thread around. It kept it nice and still. So continue those all the way down. You can really make these as long or as short as you would like. The longer they are, the harder it will be to stuff them into the end of the candy. as long as it fits, it's fine, but it just, it'll take a little bit more work to get them worked in there. And if you make them too short, maybe you won't be able to expose the entire bone. So you want to try to find that right balance for how much space you have and how much work you want to do too. So fill in the second one. Once you have that one all sculpted, you're going to go through and do the third. And really quick, while I have a moment, I just want to thank everybody for watching so far. And if you are wondering where to purchase magnets like the little ones that I am using, I do have them available in my online store, and I will put a link to them in the top of the description box below. So if you're interested, check that out. And otherwise, we're just going to finish sculpting this last little string of blood. And once all of those are done, you're going to dip the ends of the pieces of thread into some nail glue and then string them up behind the bone and glue them in place. Repeat for the second one. You want to try to glue them into the top of the piece of candy so that they can wiggle freely around the bone lower. So glue those all. Once those are all glued, apply some glue to the other ends of the wire. Try to do all three of these at the same time, and then string them in and hold them into the bottom of the other cylinder. Once those are complete, then and the glue is dry, you can use a tweezers to sort of stuff the blood into the cylinder. Now on the back of a candy corn, we're going to be sculpting our little spider body with black acrylic. We've got 2 circles for this, a larger one and a smaller one, and that is it. Once you have your little spider body sculpted, that is everything that's going to be sculpted in general, and then we can go through and we can do all of the painting. So the fun thing with this is that you can paint these candies however you like. I personally wanted to kind of keep with, I guess, classic looking candy patterns. So I'm going to give it a swirl design on top of the green wrapper for the eye candy, doing it with black paint. So just going through and doing the first base lines of all of my swirls and then filling them out and thickening them up a little bit with more of my black paint. And all of these I'm using black acrylic paint and not gel paint. The reason for that is that when you're sculpting something with acrylic, if you don't file it, it has a subtle, but it has a texture, just a little bit. And gel paint doesn't like to conform around the texture. It seems to sort of glide on top of it and almost like bump along it, if you will. So your lines won't be nice and smooth and even. Acrylic paint, however, is slightly thinner. It's less sticky and stretchy. So it will just go and glide right through that little bit of a texture and it won't be phased by it in the slightest. So it just seems to apply a little bit easier. And it's cheaper. It's significantly cheaper to buy. So if either of those things is a consideration for you and you haven't tried acrylic paint, I would highly recommend picking up even just a bottle of black or white to give it a go. Then inside, you're going to take off that lid and you're going to be painting the eyeball of your eyeball candy. So you want to give it an iris. You can do whichever color you like for your iris. I decided to go with green just so that it matched the wrapper color. Add some nice, really intense, overdramatic veins around the perimeter. Add the pupil with black acrylic paint in the middle. And then once you're done with that, you may or may not want to do this, but I am going to outline my eyeball just to set it off from the green wrapper a little bit more. That's one of those things where if you are somebody that doesn't prefer outlines, just skip it. Add a little bit of a white highlight, and then you can move on to the next piece of candy, which is our candy corn, and you can give it the stripes. Or not the stripes, you can give it the legs, which look kind of like stripes in this circumstance. But we're going to be sculpting in our little spider, painting, goodness gracious. We're going to be painting the spider legs. I started out with the first section of each leg, and then I'm going to go through and add the second sections, 2 facing up and 2 facing down on each side. 4 white eyeballs and 2 fangs, and then I'm going to do just a little bit of shading on the bone just to make it look a little bit more dimensional. Put that back inside the candy, and then on the purple wrapper we're going to be painting a swirl of white going around it in a circle. When you're doing this, do the same kind of thing that you did with the black, where you start out with thin lines and then go back through and thicken them. I'm going to do that exact same process here. When you are going over the transition from the one side of the piece of candy to the other, be careful to try to line those up very nicely so that it doesn't look like it's not supposed to line up properly, but it just kind of gently flows from one side to the other. Wrap that all the way around. When you get to the ends where it gets twisted, you're going to want to just kind of continue it up onto some of the twisted part of the purple acrylic, sort of continuing it like it just naturally goes that way. Add some other stripes to that purple end on each side. And then once you are done with all of that purple paint, depending on your acrylic paint, you may possibly need to do a second coat. Some white acrylic paints especially just need that extra layer. Some Some are pretty good. It just depends on your brand. If you do need to apply second coat, you would want to do that right off the bat. Once you're done with that, you're going to take some orange paint and add a purple, or add an orange stripe through the white stripe, just a thinner one right in the middle. You should be able to use the lines of the white stripe kind of as a guide for making sure that that orange stripe stays towards the middle, and then add an orange stripe between all of the white lines on the ends of the wrapper. And once all of this painting is done, then you can go through and you can start top coating. So everything is going to get a layer of gel top coat with the exception of the bone. So we're going to just do a nice layer over everything. The wrappers should all be shiny. Candy corn is not super shiny, but it has kind of a waxy shininess to it. So we're going to do the glossy gel top coat over that, as well as the candy, the purple candy as well. When you are top coating the purple candy, you want to make sure that you don't get too much top coat between the two pieces where you end up gluing your candy together. You want to leave it so that it's not going to be stuck. So just be cautious with that. Apply a nice thin layer over the top of everything. And then you're also going to need to apply top coat over your green candy wrapper lid, and then open up after that's been cured and apply matte top coat over the bone and over the spider's face. And by golly, that is it. This design was so much work. There's so many details, and there's 3 different 4D elements to it, which is so exciting. I love that there's just so much interaction with this design. You just keep seeing more and more to it. If you do decide to give it a try, I would absolutely love to see recreations. There are so many different fun color combinations and designs that you could implement in this. So I'd love to see how that turns out, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!